Hello, good afternoon everyone. I'm Stephen Boyce. I'm a trustee of Winchester Poetry Festival, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this, the sixth, is that right? Sixth iteration of Winchester Poetry Prize. I should start by saying that the prize was originally proposed by Madeline Smith, our indefatigable festival manager, without whom we would be nothing. And since 2016, it has established itself as one of the most popular poetry competitions in the country. The prize is sponsored by legal firm Paris Smith, to whom we are immensely grateful, and it's also supported by Warren and Sons, and our thanks to them too. Our aim, as always, is to highlight the diversity and strength of contemporary poetry, to give a level platform to poets judged entirely on the quality, craft, and imagination of their work. Once again this year, we received over 2,000 entries from around the world, and this afternoon you're going to hear poets from Nigeria, Germany, the US, and Australia, as well as all around the UK. For this reason, and because the impact of the pandemic is such, not everyone is able to be here in person, but we will have some readers online, and we will have others appearing on video. So please bear with us if this gets a bit technical, but we are keen to give all the commended poets and the prize winners their voice. I should also, at this point, just say a very big thank you to Lewis Buxton, who won this prize last year and committed to funding, generously supporting, entries from 10 poets who couldn't otherwise afford to enter the prize. And we're extremely grateful to him for his generosity. The person this year with the extraordinarily challenging task of working their way through the huge pile of entries, reading every one, and coming up with the 20 or so outstanding poems is Jacqueline Safra. Jacqueline featured in our first festival in 2014, where she made a big impression with her warmth, her inventiveness, and her honesty. More recently, she appeared alongside Sophie Herxheimer in the entertaining and illuminating conversation entitled Lipstick Intellectuals, part of our online festival program over the summer. Jacqueline describes herself as poet, editor, agitator, teacher, organizer, and word enthusiast, but not necessarily in that order. She teaches for the Poetry School and Arvon, and her books include The Kitchen of Lovely Contraptions, All My Mad Mothers, which was shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize in 2017, A Bargain with the Light, poems after Lee Miller, a most beautiful book, and Dad, Remember You Are Dead. Her latest collection, 100 Lockdown Sonnets, is published in February 2021 by Nine Arches Press. We're extremely grateful to Jacqueline Safra. Will you please welcome her?
Wow. It is I feel almost overcome just to be in the atmosphere of a poetry festival. The last time I was in a poetry festival was Verve in February before times. And it is uniquely amazing to be here. And thank you to everybody who's come along to listen, as well as thank you to the people who entered the competition and the people who are longlisted, and of course to Winchester Poetry Festival for inviting me to take on this task of judging the competition, which was a labour, but absolutely a labour of love. And I felt a great sense of gratitude to all the poets who entered, mainly because I learnt so much from this experience of really having to engage with so many different voices and really consider what it was that made a poem stand out for me. And I think it's affected my own writing. you know, already just the experience of having done that, you know, 2,200 and something poems, that's a lot of poems to be have in your head. So I could tell from the poems that were submitted that times are tough. And COVID overtly came up sometimes, but not as often as I might have expected. Loss, loneliness, death, abandonment, all those things very present in the poems, but also moments of joy, like those small moments, quite often a kind of mindfulness and a presentness about experience and the way that it was expressed in the poem. So there was some real nourishment in that for me, is getting these missives from beyond somewhere, telling me what life was like for people. There were all kinds of forms, from open forms to given forms and variations on all those. The poems on the long list are mostly written in open forms, but they really take advantage of the music and sound of language to give them heft and to give them reach. And in this sense, like all good poems, they are what I describe as formal poems, because I don't believe there is such a thing as a formless poem, right? It might be a form like a sonnet that's given to us, but it might also be an open form. And as soon as you commit a line of poetry to the page, you're already giving form to something. As soon as you choose a line break or whatever it is that you do, you're making a choice. So all poems have a form, and all the poems that are on the long list are formally working with form in the sense that content and how it is displayed on the page are working in synergy. I can't go on without really making a nod to beginnings and endings, which are crucial, absolutely crucial in poems. Often a really good poem would take 5 or 6 lines to get into its stride, to really start to invite me in and arrive at itself. It's too long. So don't take too long to set the scene before you get into the meat of the poem. Conversely, sometimes the poem would start off strongly, you know, it would go off on both feet. I'd be going right along with it. And then the ending would come as a terrible disappointment, because the poet would somehow feel the need to explain what they just eloquently expressed, or to summarize it, or to tie it up too neatly. And you know the quote from Robert Frost, you know, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. The poems that really got me were the ones that arrived at the end with a real sense of discovery and a kind of openness. Even if they did feel quite conclusive, there was something that they left me with that I could take away and go on pondering. Some of the poems were very hard to read. Some of them were very raw and very immediate and full of pain and suffering. And I was very grateful for the poems that fell into that category. Although in the end, a poem has to be more than just itself. So it has to resonate, it has to echo, it has to become universal in some way. There has to be some alchemy about it. So it needs to move the poem from being about one particular thing to spreading out, making space, being connective, being redemptive, even uplifting, however tragic it might be. And that's the joy of a great poem for me, when it can change the way that we see the world, or perhaps just change the way we think and the way we feel. And all the poems that you're going to hear today did that for me, and I believe that they will do that for you. So without further ado, I'm going to read the long-listed. I'm not going to read them at all. They're going to read their own poems, but I'm going to introduce the long-listed poems. So I'm going to begin with the commended poems, and the first poem I have on my list is coming to you through Zoom, and it's James Douthwaite's poem, Melancholies.
Melancholies. 1. The loose wind of spring lifts pages at its liberty and rages briefly as it is one with their sound. 2. The sunset is weak. Its orange light is an echo of glorious summers, too far off to the south. 3. The light distemper of clouds, they gather like the disapproval of a new lover. They are quiet, but not still. 4. The bird rattles its cage, its wings lifted by the memory of the breeze, brought through the open door. 5. All trees remember the cross at Easter time, but they are silent, lest we remember it too. 6. A blue paralysis. The sky is clear, the sun holds the river, and no one is moving. 7. The magnolias are in bloom, and the small flowers fall, weeping over their beauty, weeping over their timeliness. 8. The burial of the dead has been digitized, and all services are held at an arm's length. 9. They have laid palms by the old bridge. The breeze shifts them, and the river quiets. 10. We clasp our hands silently, hidden in the bathroom, praying that God should forgive us our distances.
This is totally what I've been looking forward to, is hearing these poems being read, these ones that I've been poring over for a long time. And now we have a live poem coming from Trelawney, Instructions for a Model Family.
Thank you. Instructions for Model Family. But when it had arrived, it looked like the box had been opened, and the next page was scribbled on, and a piece or two missing. And she woke both on the bed and under it, bunk breathless, the frame unfeasibly crooked, seeing now where its screws should have gone. A miracle keeping from collapse inside her. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, long poems, short poems, all of them brilliant. Our next reader is Jo Davis with Chronic Illness, 4 tiles from a calendar mosaic of chronic illness.
Four tiles from a calendar mosaic of chronic illness. The darkness is as heavy as the sea in this room. Light creeps out from the top of the curtain rail in yellow sharp grey and folds across the ceiling with the refractive talks of a sea sky cutting over the surface of the deep. The folds of sheets, long unwashed, long lain in, touch skin at certain points with such doubled sensuousness, like lips against the rising force of soda. The pain is a months-long voyage, and the crew are bored and mad. My dad says, you just take it like a rat. The doctor is leaning forward, clutching a coffee in a polystyrene cup, as if its white rings a life float. He has lost hair since our last appointment. This is a very long clinic, he says hopelessly. Didn't you have an operation at some point? I don't tell him at home. I call him the Wizard of Oz, or of the long yellow brick road of referrals and refusals and referrals. I don't remind him about the day he said, I can fix this. I'm good, and I'm usually right. He refers me to a shrink. Dad's just back from visiting Great Uncle Tommy, who's 94 and proud and still hasn't braved the bath since Dad's last visit. He was in the Navy during the war, said he didn't want to get his feet wet. Now his suit's too big for his little frame and has God knows what on it, but he says he's all right. When Dad went into Tommy's bathroom to fix the grab rail he bought him, the tiles came away as he touched them. Tommy cracked jokes and told lies. Dad's face is like the back of the tiles when he gets home. I don't like to tell him, he says. That must be nice for you, the receptionist smiles. To get to stay home all the time, like a holiday. She hands me the invoice for my treatment, folded. On the tube, white people pretend not to look at everybody who looks Asian. They stare more openly, though, at the first few face masks, sidelong. Then the announcement, you must stay home at all times. Even before a week is out, everyone understands me. Even free of the smaller cage of sickness, the walls of home are too tight. To breathe, to be, to feel, that must be nice. Thank you.
That's what I mean by alchemy. Thank you very much. Our next poet is also live. It's Sam Henley Smith, A Familiar Road.
A familiar route. I've researched it on the internet, how to brace my back between wall and chair, right leg slightly forward, knees pinioned fondly around your together knees. It's my turn to raise you now, Dad. British Red Cross has lent us the commode, but COVID style, we are alone. I struggle. Ease you to sitting. Gently ease. Gently, please. Then a pause. Full breath. Another breath. And if the Tamar Bridge could swing, it would look just like your legs as its long, carefully engineered limbs manoeuvre in parallel, perfectly paced. Another journey across a Devon river bed. The crooks of my arms are hooks now, nestled in your pits. And lift, and pivot, and lower. Gently ease. Gently, please. And breathe. And breathe.
And breathe, everybody. Thank you. I just remembered then, actually, when you said it, I remembered that is what I have to do as well. Breathe. Our next commended poem is from Marion Hobday. It's called Roses, and she's also
Roses. You asked me who bought the yellow roses. Were they in the house when I arrived? Through the heavy glass, the thorns were blooded claws or the beaks of aquatic birds. I bought them myself today, I said. Look, the buds are just unfurling. But your attention was already turning to the TV, the unfamiliar remote. And to be honest, I think you consider one bunch of roses enough for a lifetime. What I mean is, I would like a vase of flowers not bought by me. I would like to hold hands across a red-checked tablecloth. I would like to wander on a warm and mothy evening to a country pub and drink a glass of wine. Oh yes, I would like to open the gate at the bottom of this garden and walk off across the fields. Thank you.
Well, some generosity and some alchemy there. Yes, so our next commended poet is Alexandra Corinne Tachibana. Don't. And this is live too.
Don't stop signing off with two swans or our virtual pet dog, Mayakovsky. Don't stop squeaking kisses at the screen, showing the whites of your eyeballs. Don't stop delighting me with pictures of bladderwrack and black cap. Don't stop inventing words like in-diddy-doo-dum, saying, do you know how much I love you? Arms and legs splayed from your Spanish bed. Don't stop meeting me on the platform in a conductor's hat, kissing me in a cloistered abbey housing Catherine of Aragon, saying I'm looking very Anna Karenina in my fluffy dressing gown, adding that it's not a good analogy since she threw herself from a train. Having naked tea propped up by Holiday Inn pillows, sending me billowing Malaga bisnaga, whose scent makes me dizzy. And although I'm a little bit wobbly and your big toes curl in different directions, let's keep stepping out. Thank you.
I think I did mention that there was some joy in some of these poems, and I was very grateful for it when I found it, and some humour too. Our next commended poem is from Rachel Cleverly, Things Which Make My Life Difficult and My Writing Bad.
Things which make my life difficult and my writing bad. Less time working, more time fucking up my back. 1,000+ unread emails, I know. This morning I woke up to one new mail. Pop, ping, ing, badunk. My inbox has never felt so purposeless. Since they've been archived, collapsed into a folded thing, which threatens to be full as a tummy. All my family are on calls to each other, in different rooms with unprofessional backgrounds. I've turned an ironing board into a standing desk. I've CC'd myself into a nap with you. Even in sleep, I enter formally. None of my habits seem bad now I have someone else to check my spam. Did you notice my hair has grown? When you get this, can you shake my hand?
Read beautifully from a phone. I don't know if you saw that. Lovely poem as well. Our next commended poem is from Helen Bowl, Monsieur le Barman.
Thanks. Hi. This is from a series of poems about a character called the barman, who's like this straight white dude, and his relationship with the speaker, Monsieur le Barman. The barman is learning French. I already speak French, and he knows how I love to tell people what they're doing wrong. His accent is particularly awful, but you really have to live somewhere to pick that kind of thing up. It's Tuesday night, and the pub's empty. The barman sprays half a pint of Sprite into a glass and asks what remember is in French. Se souvenir de, I say. It's reflexive and irregular, like veneer. Too complicated for me, he says, opening a pack of cheese and onion crisps. Je parle français et pas cantonais. Ma grand-mère ne savait parler que cantonais. Que quoi sai? I want to say all this to the barman, but I think it would be too much. So instead, we do verb drills. Je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est, et c'est facile. Thanks.
Beautiful poem about communication, or maybe miscommunication and language. Witty too. Our next reader, who's also commended, is Kirsten Anderson with her poem Goodfellows, and this is coming to us on a video, I believe.
Hello from Glasgow. My name is Kirsten Anderson, and I'm sorry I can't be in Winchester today, but I am beyond thrilled to be on the long list for the Winchester Poetry Prize, especially given that one of my favourite poets, Jacqueline Safra, was a judge. So I'd like to thank her for longlisting my poem and thank everybody involved in the prize. And I'm now going to read my poem, which is called Goodfellas. Goodfellas. I love that film. You never asked me what I liked, so there you go. But not that scene. The one where the waiter has to dodge foot bullets. I feel sick watching that bit. Is Joe Pesci joking? Or not? Henry's laughing, louder and louder, as if to prove he isn't scared, is never scared, of the man he calls his trusted friend. Knock knock, you said, lifting my nightdress, your fist between my legs. Is there anybody in? I stiffened too, like you, but knew to laugh. You drove us drunk the night before, shared how you once smashed your baby mother's face in with your baby's bottle for giving you mouth. I like how you're the quiet kind, babe. You don't make scenes like her. Some men give compliments that are really instructions. Thank you.
Video also starring Frida Kahlo. Yeah, a very strong poem with a kick, right? Sort of 2/3 in. Good place to put a kick in your poem if you're going to do that. Our next commended poem is from Sharon Black, and she's also on video. This poem is called Cocoon.
Hi, I'm delighted to have had my poem selected on the long list for this year's Winchester Poetry Prize, and I'm going to read it to you now. It's called Cocoon, and it was written as part of a series of poems about the Cévennes in France, where I live, that will form my collection, The Red House, coming out next year. Our local village of Saint-Jean-du-Gard has a fabulous new museum called La Maison Rouge, housed in a former silk mill, where one wing has been left pretty much as it was, with all the tools and machinery of the spinners and even the silk worms themselves on display. French silk production reached its peak in 1853, and it ended when our local museum, the Maison Rouge, closed its doors in 1965. It was the last operating silk mill in the country. Cocoon. The worm inside ticks dryly, its life's work come to this single strand of silk, looped in figures of 8 around a twitching cargo, plucked from a heather sprig and bagged with 1,000, 100,000 more before being dunked into a copper basin at which a girl sits, aged 13, fingers dabbling the steaming water, teasing out infinity, one end, then the other, twisting, setting them in motion, filament barely visible as it passes through the stinking vapour, over her shoulder. 1,500 metres of unbroken yarn fed through hook and eye to a bobbin where it spun once more, a shining coil to be dispatched to Lyon, end of a thread that spanned 150 years, brought riches to a few men, to the fileuse, scarred hands, arthritis, a sickness in the lungs.
Honestly, I just want to hug everyone. It is so amazing hearing these poems read, and that quietly political one too. Okay, so our next commended poem is from Pat Winslow, The Chest of Drawers, and Pat is on Zoom.
Hello everyone, thank you for long listing my poem. Lovely to be up here with a lot of really good poets as well. This is The Chest of Drawers. All forbidden things have a spell cast on them. We never knew what was in it, only what came out. A saw long enough to play music on. Pliers, sealing wax, string, a harmonica whose notes freaked the dog out. Farthings, screws, offcuts of lino, fuse wire, rubber bands. The drawers were skew width and wouldn't close straight, which is how she'd know you'd been in. She might slam your hands tight. You'd never get them out. You'd be gnawing your arms to stumps while she got on with the cooking and sat down to eat. If it was Coronation Street, you'd have all night. The Avengers, News at 10, football. She'd be there till the little white dot disappeared, eating toffees and spitting nuts across the room. The only escape was the window left open for the cat, over fences and walls, till you reached the Cunninghams and could leg it to the heath and the tree where the man hung himself and the horses sometimes came galloping and the whole of London spread out before you. You, with your stumps trailing blood, and her enormous bulk monstering up the hill, still in her hairnet and slippers, brandishing the stick she'd give you what for with, which was why we never went anywhere near it.
Such drama and such humour combined, and you can see the alchemical, the chemical effect of those two things colliding, those two qualities. The last of our commended poems is from Chrissy Banks, and it's called Damson Wine, and she's also on Zoom.
Hi, it's great to be here and to be included with all these wonderful poets. Damson Wine. Before my grandfather offered me that first taste, lifting down from the pantry shelf with both hands his bottle of homemade damson wine, before he poured me a glass of the ruby swill, I knew of neither the sweet wooziness that would warm my belly, nor wine's slick unleashing of the ties which hold firm and safe and quiet the wild things living inside us all. The only time I saw Pop drunk, he was all gush and kisses, thanking my mother for being a wonderful daughter, holding her hand, till at last she bundled him out the door. I'm not sure if that was after or before. I learned what he did to my grandmother those nights when he and his pay packet were finally finished at the pub.
One of those poems that starts off appearing quite benign, right, and then moves into another register altogether, and I think does that extraordinarily successfully. So that was all our commended poems. The first on my list of highly commended poems is from Darach Byrne, Last Time Ghazal, and this comes on Zoom from Australia.
Good evening, everyone. Last Time Ghazal. All those forgotten finales. I can't remember when I rode a skateboard, say, or rolled a cigarette for the last time, paddled a kayak, fortified a treehouse, or signed a binding contract. I blank on the detail of childhood pastimes and adult obligations alike. A podcast said that I should pour my coffee / butter my toast / wipe my arse as if it were the last time I ever would. And I agree, but I don't think that I'd remember any better. Some things stay though, like the last time I saw you months after we split, standing at pedestrian lights, eyes at a side angle. I couldn't read your face. You glanced past mine, and my body quickened, molding to its shape near the end, steel jaw, full clench, belly fire gone cold. Long past time to leave, but I did, or you did, and when that yo-yo string snapped, I spent a long year inside myself, contemplating lost time, until, by and by, I took root to rise like the oak that I'm named for, ready to live again, as though it were the last time.
Yeah, beautiful take on the traditional form, the ghazal, ghazal, or ghazal, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So our next reader is also on Zoom, this time coming from Nigeria, Othuke Umukoro, Mother 101.
Thank you very much. This is for my mother. Mother 101. Most mornings, no kidding, my mama went to those mosquito-infested cassava farms on an empty stomach. In the night, under the bright yellow light from our craggy kerosene lantern, with hands blistered from pulling stubborn spare grass and wielding a cutlass, she would help me with my math homework. I am thinking of love again, how it is an altar, there is an offering, there is a ceremony of miracles. You, the mountains that sheltered the cities of my body, Mama, you, the iridescent black opal in this room perfumed with slick songs. And I've never really thanked you. You who taught this black boy how to prepare the evening meal, who taught me to always plant everything I do with kindness, who prayed me forth saying, bloom, baby, bloom. Today, a stranger turned and smiled at me in the market, and immediately I was back at the calm sea of your face, the starry islands of your eyes, the generosity of your hands dropping fecund conkerner after fecund conkerner into holes in the soft, dark earth. In the cold night air of this city that always wears the old rusty hat of longing, sitting by the fireside of memory. Thanks for that afternoon you sold 2 sacks of cassava to pay for my school uniform. Thanks for doing the most important job in the world with the incandescent grace of a Black Panther. If they ask, tell them this. In the end, again and again, I lifted the poem to my face like a glowing menorah, planted psalms in my mouth, and praised you who woke up every day and chose courage.
Another absolutely beautiful poem, a praise poem, really, a prayer, almost a prayer, isn't it? Our next highly commended poem comes from Jed Myers in the USA, who is also on Zoom.
Hello, thank you very much. Quite a thrill to listen to all these beautiful poems and to have one among them. This poem mentions an inland sea, and it's the Salish Sea, it's Puget Sound, and the Salish name comes from the people who flourished here before the white people came. The news at Golden Gardens. Osaka's doctors have run low on the propofol to sedate the breathless they must intubate. Turtles repose on the pond's logs, though it isn't sunny. A duckling scuttles over the planked walkway. In Maharashtra, surgeons take black fungus colonized eyes from those who otherwise will die. Today, the tide's risen close enough to reach the nearest of the ghost pier's bleached posts. Where ever isn't here. In Gaza, how will the bone-shaken rise from their new era of stones? And here, on a taken inland sea and its land, crows slash the wind, hawks hold drifts above the trees, and a freight train groans in from south to somewhere, lugging God knows what they need there.
And I'm sure you can hear the beautiful and incredibly melancholy music of that poem. I mean, just really beautifully pitched. I'm so thrilled about the sort of international nature of the poems that have been that I chose, without even realising it. I'm so pleased with the poems I chose. Okay, so our next reader, who's highly commended, is Simon Madrell with Nature Poem.
Hi, I'd like to thank Dennis Smith for inspiring this poem. Nature Poem. The leaves have flounced their annual fall. The branches skeleton the sky with an odd fruit swaying in the cold. I didn't want to start with leaves adorning the silver birch I love. How they fade to yellow triangles with a sunset pink tinge. No one wants to hear a poem about nature, preferring the nature of our bodies, something easy to blame, cuts at the wrists, bleeding out, how leaves fall to the ground, bury themselves, rot in layers like shame. See how easy it is to mention shame. Is it possible to ban shame, even from a gay boy's poem? I walk in the woods, think of how its silver-barked youth peels daily from its trunk like tissues. How I used to pick at it gently and stroke its skin.
how their smooth twigs age and develop warts. There I go again, talking about our shame. How the bark matures too, and develops dark, diamond-shaped fissures. See how trunks tarnish so easily, and branches weep with catkins. Those two kinds of fruits, one hangs longer, together in 2s to 4s, like lambtails. There I go, talking about hanging. Our one favoured solution. There I go, talking about our dead. The other fruit, small, alone, becoming deep crimson, spreading its blooded seed in the wind, like gossip and verbals in the playground, landing on the fertile soil of a gay boy's shoulders, hanging. There I go again, talking about our dead. And if they are not your dead, you are lost to me, lost to the nature of being. And as I walk home, I see a coppice of saplings thriving in their silken, slender beauty, and remember how they are favoured by wise gardeners who renew and purify their land.
A poem that keeps looping round, doesn't it, and repeating, and that beautiful sustained metaphor that keeps coming in and, coming to the foreground and then being brought back again. Thank you. Thank you. Our next highly commended poet is Kathleen Latham with Lockdown Cherries, and she is live.
Hi, it's very nice to be here. Quite exciting. So thank you for listening to my poem. Lockdown Cherries. Oh, I forgot my glasses. As spring swung her hips along the empty avenues, the trees flushed with a glow the colour of blood plums and waited, containing their excitement in small, tight, sun-greened fists, until at last, almost surprising themselves, the double buds opened, tickling heaven pink, a madness of froth spraying this way, that way, like magnums of Dom Perignon rosé, pale coral, flamingo, rose madder, each branch effervescing with the frenzy of freshly filled flutes, swagging the air's wide orioles in pendant blossoms, their sweetness uplifted and uplifting, a living hokusai of the floating, fleeting world. Every day I would step out to soak up the abundant fizz, to see the dazzle of April embellish the garlands, the blown boutonniere, like a badly behaved guest at a wedding, 3 sheets to the wind under a table of fresh air.
That poem brought me so much joy, and I kept looking at that last line, under a table of fresh air. Just loved it. Fantastic. Okay, the last of our highly commended poems before we get on to the Hampshire Prize and the winners is Annabelle Marshall, Homecoming, and she's from the USA and on video.
Homecoming. I forget to pay the ticket. This is my first train in years, so things tend to slip through the gyri of my mind. That is my only explanation. Clearly, lost at sea is no excuse for the man trying to ring up my fine when he asks for my address, and I confess to him that I cannot remember the house number, though I recall our street has no name, in a town with one road winding, down past the forest green hill, and past the battered church to land at your limestone doorstep. It used to be mine as well, but I am not sure I can lay claim to something I cannot describe in enough words to be assigned my evasion fine. He looks displeased and waves me on, though I remain in my seat and feel hot blood rise through my jaw into my cheeks. My ears hear a boiling teapot. I am no longer of here. Rain droplets on the window transform the scene outside to unwitting pointillism. There are people dotting the grass. A young child in plastic pink boots plays in a fountain like we used to in late July. By the time I reach the house, number 17 as it turns out, I am feeling embarrassed and decide not to tell you about the train, and yet they are the first words from my mouth after hello and did you change the front door? No, you did not. It just seems that way somehow as I jiggle the handle again.
You may have missed that was a kind of dramatic monologue, and so I was quite surprised when I saw the poet who is nothing like the character in the dramatic monologue, and the sound was maybe a bit difficult, but I do urge you to read that poem on the page to fully appreciate it. Now, it's time to present the Hampshire Prize, and I'm going to invite Kieran Phelan up, who's a trustee of the Winchester Poetry Festival, to present that prize.
Thank you. I'm not sure I deserve any applause. Speaking of Winchester and our sponsors, I hope we'll always have Paris Smith, as we have had two other sponsors that have been with the festival since its inception, and they are two in particular, P&G Wells, which is one of the oldest trading independent bookshops in the country, and still trading and outside selling you the books I hope you'll be buying. And the stationers and gift shop and indeed office suppliers, Warren and Son, who in particular have provided stationery for all of the festivals we've had, for course participants, the poets, and more recently the prize winners. And they've been very keen to support the Hampshire poet. And I give you these names not just as a sort of, oh yes, there they are, but just to think that actually they support us and they in turn can be supported. I hope you won't ever require legal assistance, but if you do, Paris Smith is the place. Books, of course, from College Street, and indeed Warren and Sons for their enduring support. And I think that, am I right? Shall I now call forth Imogen Cook, who has had the distinction of winning the Hampshire Prize for two sessions in a go. And that shows great consistency. So
I'm just trying to get the stationers of pens.
Yes, right here. Do you want? I'm going to give you this now, and then you can read your code. So, I mean, one can't have too many Lamy pens, I agree, but this time there's a Lamy notebook.
Oh, great.
So I present you this now. Okay, thank you.
This is called Frankenstein. Until 1 a.m., I was reading Frankenstein in the library, learning what a lack of love can do to a body. And on the way home, I am surrounded by drunks and their caretakers for a long while, some hand in hand, others crawling into long black cars. Eventually, they disintegrate, smile or cry into darkness, and I am left in the almost alone, 2 long dark streets from home. A man has walked behind me for 500 or 600 yards now, and I quicken my pace when he does, tighten my grip on the keys between my fingers, try not to look over my shoulder too many times. I feel bad, letting him know I mistrust him, that this silence shared with a stranger feels less like peace and more like menace. I can't stop thinking about Frankenstein. Dear God, I'm thinking, I hope someone has loved that body of his, saved mine.
Winchester, the Hampshire Prize, second year in a row, and thinking of endings, what a resonant ending that was. Okay, so at last we get to the top three winners, and the first one is a poem by Paula Balfe called Miscarriage, and she's on video.
This is my poem, Miscarriage. It's small, all lowercase, no punctuation, just gaps to breathe in. And I should say that the word missed is spelled M-I-S-S-E-D. Miscarriage. Carried off in the mist, rising to a sky that rolls up its carpet of stars. I cradle my solemn totem, whiter as night stumbles and falls, nursing a torn horizon where the sea recoils, slams shut like a giant clam, rocking her pearls. And then this turmoil of stillness.
I'm just going to read this because I think the sound there is just not good enough for the poem. So I hope she will forgive me. And also, I did want to say a few things about that poem, and in my excitement to get there, I forgot. So what I've said is, this short and devastating 12-line lyric declares itself in its title, Miscarriage. It uses the white space of the poem that she spoke about at the beginning with great delicacy. There's a very daring pun on that word mist, which you'll hear when I read it, which is a bit of a risk, but worth it. So the poem takes on some very familiar tropes. It's got the sky, stars, moon, horizon, the sea, but it really transforms them into fresh metaphors that make the experience described both concrete and palpable to the reader. So night stumbles, the sea slams shut like a giant clam rocking her pearls. And that verb, rocking, does so much work in the poem, taking us back to the idea of the cradle and motherhood and loss. And finally, the poem lands on that last line that is in itself an oxymoron, this turmoil of stillness. A beautiful and simultaneously unbearable poem that deserves to be heard clearly. Miscarriage. Carried off, and the mist rising to a sky that rolls up its carpet of stars. I cradle the moon, my solemn totem, whiten as night stumbles and falls, nursing a torn horizon where the sea recoils, slams, shut like a giant clam rocking her pearls. And then this turmoil of stillness. If you're watching, Paula, forgive me for rereading your poem, but I think it was important that people heard it. Now, the second prize goes to Laurie Bolger for Gem. Very different poem to the previous one. Also makes use of a lot of white space. Lively and evocative prose poem that tells a story with a very intriguing opening. Somewhere you're cleaning another person's house. What a great start to a poem. It carries a huge emotional heft, this poem. It's utterly contemporary. It's got an early nod to Instagram, and it's a poem built around a series of images that could be Instagram photos. There's questions, there's memories. It gives the reader a window into a long and close relationship from childhood to adulthood. It's about the longing for connection, detailed accuracy in it, the feeling of missing someone you love. And they're almost there in the poem because of all these images. I was really utterly captivated by details like we both agreed it had been a hard year and that the towels smelt like biscuits. And questions like, are you picking the bacon bits out of the potato skins? So intimate and detailed. And then this poem lands exquisitely with a visceral, tender and celebratory image drawn from a memory that's both nostalgic and joyful. So you can listen out for that. I won't give it away now. But it made me think of birthdays and weddings, and I felt enriched and cheered, enormously cheered by this poem. So, Laurie.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Thanks, Winchester, for sorting all of it out, all the tech and all the... Well done. Been my worst nightmare. I'm so chuffed to be reading this poem, which is titled Gem, and the reason is it's called Gem is because my sister's name is Gem, and she's just sitting over there. And she's my favourite person out of everyone. So she's worked some really hard jobs for very wealthy people, and because we're all quite tough, because we're all quite tough in our family, she does it really well. But I think people think they're quite glamorous jobs, and they're actually really hard. So this is totally fair, and yeah. Gem. You're cleaning another rich person's house. In the hills, your Instagram makes you look like a millionaire. Remember when you took me to that spin studio and all giddy with endorphins, you kept laughing, why are you crying? And I kept saying, I don't know. And we agreed it had been a tough year and that the towels smelt like biscuits. And walking out onto Cardinal Place like the opposite of bachelorettes, we got donuts and I paid. And I want to say, I'm sorry I always make it about me. In the programme, who am I most like? The anxious husband, the sister that struggles with her weight, the actor addict brother. What are you thinking, Gem? What are you thinking about dusting in that head torch or polishing fat lemons with olive oil? Tell me the greatest thing you've seen today. Did a bird shit all over the washing again? What ice cream is in the crew mess? Do you miss the MSG buffet and Pret? Are you picking the bacon bits from the potato skins? Are you dragging a big orange car up the side of a mountain, like when we shoved Barbie's long plastic legs and dragged her around the paddling pool? Westway, Berry Berry, Pickapocalos, Jamie's. Do you remember when we left Ken on the radiator and he melted? Those boys didn't stand a chance with us, Gem. So do the face. Do the face, the one you pulled when you got caught lugging Verve Clicquot up the lifts. I bet you're opening a Magnum with a knife and they're all cheering. And no one ever died of drinking furniture polish. So deep clean the cocaine off the life ring, the dinner plate, the moon from the bow when the sun is still up. Do you remember us, Gem, in the Avenue Bakery when we could taste the iced sugar the minute we walked in the door? Thank you.
Definitely want to hug you. Yeah. Right. Want to hug everybody. Hope that anyone who wants to give me a hug afterwards can. So now we come to our first prize winner. Sorry? Oh, sorry. In my excitement and my enthusiasm, I forgot to ask Hugh Miles from Paris Smith, and we probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, to come and give Laurie her second prize. Really sorry.
It's the most important.
Jem there. Thanks, Jem. Thank you so much. Oh, I feel so grateful. And thanks for coming. Imagine there'd be no audience, would there? Well, there would on Zoom, but yeah. Thank you, Jacqueline.
I'm not going to take up too much of everybody's time, and I know that you'll all be on tenterhooks to listen to the first prize. I always find it slightly odd when people thank me on behalf of Paris Smith for sponsoring events, because actually for me, it's the other way around. This is very important to us. You can't do business in a community without giving back to a community. And what better way of doing that than to sponsor events like this? So you never need to thank me, Stephen. It's I who should be thanking you and Jane and everybody else involved. I think it's a triumph that you've managed to overcome the difficulties of technology, that you've blended the video, the Zoom, and obviously the live performances as well as you have. So I think that's a tremendous achievement, and it's been a great pleasure for me on behalf of Paris Smith to be part of it. So thank you very much indeed. Many businesses will tell you that they care about their communities, and no doubt many do. But for our part, it's our actions that prove the truth of our words. You may have seen in the news that Southampton has been longlisted to become UK City of Culture for 2025. And 20 aspirants have now become 8. Paris Smith is one of 2 premier partners of Southampton's bid, and we're about to make a huge multiple-year contribution, both in resources and financial support, to put the city and the wider region firmly in the national and international spotlight. A successful bid for Southampton will be a successful bid for Hampshire, and will do an enormous amount for our region and for the arts within our region. As other examples, we continue to support the Mayflower, the Theatre Royal in Winchester, and the Hampshire Cultural Trust. Achievement requires the courage to try, and I would like to commend all the poets today on their courage. It's one thing to stand up and say a few words about something. It's entirely different to create something, to give something of yourself to others. That's where the true courage lies. I think this is the 5th year that we've sponsored this event, and that was the most powerful collection of poems I've had the pleasure of listening to in those 5 years, and utterly contemporary and bang on the beat of what's happening in Britain today. Immensely powerful stuff, and a massive pleasure for everybody here, I'm sure, and certainly me, to listen to that. So thank you for your courage and your creativity and for sharing your work with us. This has been a wonderful event. Thank you.
And breathe, as I think someone said earlier. Apologies for getting you. I was just getting carried away with the poems, honestly. And of course, the arts do need, they need money in order to really fully function. And we, we're all symbiotic, aren't we? So, we need to be all working together. And it's really great that you're doing this. Thank you. So now on to the first prize winner. This is The Starlings by Leslie Saunders. Very simple title. Gives way to an epigraph that sets us up for tragedy. On the 10th of December 2019, near Llyn Llywelyn, near Anglesey, hundreds of birds fell from the sky and died. In fact, this epigraph only serves to strengthen what follows. This poem, with its intense visual descriptions, its spiritual, metaphysical weight, carries us relentlessly along, forcing us to contemplate up close a tragedy I think most of us would prefer not to think about. The opening line is, somehow, without meaning to, we have made this happen. What an opening. With its use of the first person plural, it makes us all culpable, including the poet herself, of course. And the narrative unfolds quite gently to give us the grief in waiting, close up and immediate. Heaven tore open, birds lay in the road, too many to count, each with a small berry of red in its beak, the spilt bead of its spirit, she says. And this gives you a very precise idea of the poet's use of metaphor, and the bending of the English language, like when she says an iridescence of bruise and slippage, the music of that line, but also the way she's using the words, does only what poetry can do. This poem really reaches beyond language and into the realm of feeling and keeps us there until the very end. And the end itself eludes explanation or paraphrasing. I've pondered this ending a lot, as you can imagine. And although I think I get it, I can't say exactly how. I just know that it goes right here. And I'm, using my negative capability. I'm not irritably reaching out after fact and reason to try and understand this ending or decode it. Again, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll hear it when Leslie gets to it. But massive congratulations to Leslie Saunders, who's produced this beautiful and haunting poem of our times, climate change and grief and beauty all in one space. So thank you all for listening. Here she is.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm sorry I can't be with you. Circumstances have meant that I have to be at home. So I'm going to read my poem, The Starlings, and I'm very, very grateful to have it longlisted for the Winchester Poetry Festival competition. On the 10th of December 2019, near a lake on the island of Anglesey, hundreds of birds fell from the sky and died. The starlings. Somehow, without meaning to, we have made this happen. We were going about our days, the sky icy molten, blue on gold, while in the here and gone of each flying cloud, no wider than a wingspan, there hung a grief in waiting, a magnum mysterium, like that sweet-voiced carol we learnt at school, in which, verse by merry verse, the little child turns to gore and thorn, then gall. Heaven tore open, birds lay in the road, too many to count, each with a small berry of red in its beak, the spilt bead of its spirit. Gathered there, as if still alive to the flocks, seethe and earthward swerve, they furled and settled one last time into a swarm of stillness, a scrimped presence of feather and gristle, roosting in plain sight on the far edge of darkness. Then just an iridescence of bruise and slippage. So we go about our days as if there were nothing left for us to do or say, as if in all this season of roseless waiting, we no longer had the heart to hear a live thing sing.
Thank you, poets. It's a real privilege to be in the room with you. My name is Jane Bryant, and I'm the recently appointed chair of Winchester Poetry Festival. Like Hugh Miles, I always think that entering for a competition requires a great deal of resilience and determination and courage. It's almost as if we put our speeches together. But first of all, you have the concept, the idea, the crafting, the recrafting, And then the bravery and the courage to submit your poems, which are part of yourself, alongside your peers for professional review. And I think that takes an incredible amount of determination and bravery. Thank you for that. And what a joyousness and reflectiveness of poetry we've had today. What diversity and strength. Thank you to all for your depth, for your expressiveness, for your innovation and your creativity, and for sharing all this with us today. Thank you to Jacqueline Safra. Gosh, our wonderful judge, for your sensitivity and insights, for your thoughtfulness, and for your sense of infectious joy, your irrepressible joy as well. It's been wonderful to have you work with us. Thank you so much. And thank you to the sponsors, and of course, Hugh Miles and Paris Smith and Warrens for the Hampshire Prize. Do all, please, purchase this wonderful anthology of all the highly commended and the commended and the prize-winning poets. It's available at the front desk. So please do pick up your anthology, because we've had this wonderful reading, but now you have time to reflect on the joyousness and reflectiveness of those poems. So thank you very much. I think I shall stop there and let you all go and have coffee and think about the poems. And join us for reception if you would like to. Thank you.